The storm howled across the silver plains that night. Moonlight spilled through shredded clouds, painting the world in a ghostly blue. The scent of blood clung to the air, metallic, sharp, undeniable. Arya ran through the wilds barefoot, her breath breaking in shallow gasps. Her torn dress clung to her soaked skin, her pulse loud enough to drown the sound of snapping twigs beneath her feet. The forest seemed alive, whispering warnings she could no longer hear. Behind her, wolves howled, her pursuers. Her former pack, the night wind cut through her wounds like shards of glass. Each step felt like defiance, each heartbeat a rebellion against the destiny that had betrayed her. The moon watched in silence, cold and distant, as if judging whether she deserved to survive. She stumbled, crashing to her knees in the mud. Her trembling hands pressed into the earth, slick with rain and blood. The world tilted, sound warping into a low, mournful hum. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered for her to rise. But another voice, the cruel echo of her past, hissed that she was nothing, that she had been born cursed. And yet, beneath that chaos, something ancient stirred within her veins. A warmth, a pulse, a memory that didn't belong to this life. A silver spark. It flickered through her chest before vanishing like mist, leaving her breathless. The air thickened around her, trembling with unseen energy. Somewhere in the storm, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the earth itself. Before we continue, please, my friends keep saying I'm wasting my time on YouTube, that I'll never even reach 1,000 subscribers. I want to prove them wrong. So please, if you're still here, subscribe to King Chronicles. It means the world. All right, let's continue. Arya forced herself up, clutching a tree for balance. The forest stretched endlessly before her, cloaked in fog. Her heartbeat thundered. The moon above shifted, splitting into twin crescents, like two silver eyes watching her. She didn't know what it meant, only that her body trembled with a strange pull, something old, something hungry. She was being hunted not just by wolves, but by fate. The unexpected savior. The Alpha appears. Somewhere behind her a growl broke through the storm, low, deep, commanding. Arya froze. The forest went silent, even the wind held its breath. Then she saw him. A figure stepped from the fog, towering yet calm, his eyes glowing faintly amber beneath the hood of his cloak. The rain bent around him, as if it dared not touch him. The Alpha King. The wolf whispered about in campfire tales, said to command both beasts and moonlight. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The air itself bent in deference to him. Her first instinct was fear. Every instinct screamed, run. But something rooted her there. Something magnetic, unsettling, primal. When his gaze locked with hers, she felt her pulse stutter. It wasn't just a look, it was recognition, as if he already knew her scent. Lightning flashed, illuminating the sharp planes of his face, too perfect, too distant to be human. Power rolled off him in quiet waves, steady and dangerous. He took a single step forward, and the fog seemed to part for him. Arya stumbled back, clutching her side where blood still seeped through torn skin. Stay away, she wanted to scream, but her voice refused her. Because when his eyes met hers again, they weren't filled with violence. They were filled with ache. He stopped a few feet away, tilting his head slightly, studying her like a memory he couldn't place. Then his nostrils flared, his jaw tightened. He had scented her. For a moment the world fell away. No sound, no rain, only that shared breath between them, hers ragged, his controlled. He took off his cloak and dropped it at her feet without a word. It was heavy, lined with fur, carrying the scent of forest and steel. He didn't move closer. He simply turned his gaze toward the direction she had come from, the howls growing nearer. Arya watched as he lifted his hand. A whisper of power stirred. Shadows rippled across the trees. The forest obeyed him. The howls faded, swallowed by the storm. When it was over, silence returned, thick and suffocating. The Alpha King looked back at her. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet, like thunder whispered instead of shouted. You shouldn't be here. But she already knew that. She just didn't know why. As he led her through the dark woods, her mind drifted back to the night everything had shattered. Her pack had called her cursed, a child born beneath the twin moons, marked with silver eyes that glowed when she cried. They said she carried the remnants of an old spirit, a forbidden bloodline that had once defied the Moon Council. She had spent years trying to silence that rumor, trying to be ordinary. But the curse had never left her. It showed itself the night she turned 18, when her body began to burn beneath the moonlight and she shifted, not into the dark-coated wolf of her lineage, but into something no one had seen before. A creature of light and silver flame. Her alpha had called her an abomination. Her mother had begged for mercy. By dawn, Arya was cast out, stripped of her name, her rank, her pack mark. Now, walking beside the stranger who commanded the forest itself, she felt that same burning beneath her skin, the pull of something ancient. The Alpha King's silence spoke volumes. His eyes scanned the horizon, as if expecting something to appear. He carried himself like a man burdened by centuries, haunted by the ghosts of his own throne. Arya could feel it, the loneliness clinging to him like shadow. She wanted to ask his name, but the words caught in her throat. Some part of her already knew. The myth awakens. They reached the edge of the forest just before dawn. The storm had passed, leaving behind mist and the faint scent of burnt ozone. Ahead lay a clearing, circular and still, with ancient stones rising from the earth like the ribs of a fallen god. The Alpha King stopped, his hand brushing one of the stones. It pulsed faintly under his touch, runes lighting up in pale blue fire. Arya stepped closer, mesmerized. The symbols looked familiar, not from books, but from her dreams. Every night since childhood she had seen the same vision, two moons colliding above a burning sea, a woman standing in silver light, whispering her name. Arya had thought it was madness. Now, seeing those same symbols carved in the stone, she realized it had been memory. The Alpha King spoke softly, his voice reverent and tired. They said she would rise beneath twin moons, the child of flame born of exile, cursed to bring balance between shadow and light. Arya's heart stilled. They said. His gaze met hers. The prophecy, the one they buried. A shiver ran down her spine, because in that moment she understood. The night she was cast out hadn't been coincidence, it had been fear. They knew what she might become. And perhaps, so did he. The mist thickened, swirling around her feet like smoke. The moonlight deepened into gold. And somewhere in that silence, the earth whispered her name, not as a curse but as a calling. Arya. Her chest burned again, that same silver pulse flickering beneath her ribs. She gasped as light burst from her palms, faint but real. The runes on the stones blazed in response. The Alpha King didn't move. His expression was unreadable, part awe, part sorrow. Then quietly he said, "It's beginning." She didn't know what he meant. She only knew that for the first time in her life, the power that had brought her pain now felt alive. It was both terrifying and beautiful. A part of her that no rejection could erase. She looked at the Alpha King, and for a heartbeat, she saw not a stranger but something else entirely. A thread of destiny connecting them beneath the moons. But destiny was rarely kind, and somewhere, in the distance, the first horn of the mating ceremony echoed. Low and mournful. She didn't yet know she'd sit beside him soon, didn't know that in a few hours, when his wolf scented hers, every prophecy written in blood would ignite. All she knew now was the tremor in her chest, the whisper of fate breathing her name, and the feeling that the storm had only just begun. The first horn faded into the mist, low and ancient, a sound that once called wolves home and now summoned them to choose their fates. Arya stood frozen beneath the twin moons, her pulse still echoing with the rhythm of prophecy. The Alpha King's eyes lingered on her for a heartbeat too long, long enough for her to feel the question behind his calm. "Who are you, truly?" Then he turned away. The air shifted with him, cold and sharp, as if the forest itself obeyed his silence. They walked toward the clearing where the mating ceremony would soon begin. Every step took them deeper into a world she had been forbidden to touch. Torches lined the path. burning with blue fire that hissed against the rain-damp air. The scent of wolves' sweat and expectation hung heavy. Arya pulled his cloak tighter around herself, trying to disappear inside it. It still carried his warmth. She hated that it made her feel safe. Beyond the ridge, the ancient stronghold of the Moon Throne rose, stone towers carved with runes, banners of silver and midnight black rippling in the wind. It was said that no outsider had ever walked through its gates unmarked. Tonight, she would. The Alpha King strode ahead, his presence parting the guards like tide around a rock. None dared question him, though their eyes flicked toward the small figure trailing behind. She could feel their judgment pressing against her skin. A stray, a cursed one, and yet, something in their scent betrayed unease. They smelled it too. The power beneath her skin, the storm that hadn't died. Inside, the hall pulsed with life. Wolves in human form filled the chamber, draped in silks and scars, eyes gleaming beneath torchlight. Drums beat slow and deep, echoing through the stone like the heart of the mountain. At the center stood the ceremonial dais, carved from obsidian and moonstone. It gleamed as if wet with memory. The Alpha King ascended first, his movements measured, graceful. When he reached the throne, he turned, waiting. Arya hesitated only a breath before stepping into the open. A hush fell. Every gaze pinned her in place, the girl wrapped in the king's cloak, the stranger who smelled of lightning. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is she? Why does she wear his mark? Why does the moon bend toward her? Arya's stomach twisted. She could almost hear her old Alpha's voice in the crowd's hiss, monster, pretender, curse. She wanted to run. But she remembered the forest, the way he'd stood between her and death without a word. She lifted her chin and kept walking. When she reached the steps, he inclined his head, barely but enough that the crowd gasped. The king had acknowledged her. And in this world, that meant everything. The ceremony began. Incense filled the air, sweet, heavy, intoxicating. Pairs stepped forward, hands bound in silver ribbon, claiming mates under the eyes of the twin moons. The drums quickened, echoing the pulse of 1,000 hearts. Arya felt it building inside her too, a restlessness, a heat she didn't understand. The silver pulse in her chest stirred again, answering some invisible call. Then it happened. A gust of wind tore through the hall, snuffing half the torches. The crowd gasped as the blue fire dimmed to grey, and the Alpha King's head snapped toward her, eyes blazing gold. He had scented her. The sound that escaped him was not human. A low growl, deep enough to rattle the stones beneath their feet. Power rolled off him, raw and unrestrained. The crowd stumbled back. Arya's heart hammered. The air between them thickened, alive with something ancient and unbreakable. The bond. Every wolf in the room felt it, the electric crack of destiny snapping into place. The king's chosen mate was a cursed outcast. Chaos erupted. Voices shouted, chairs toppled, claws scraped against marble. Impossible! She's not one of us. The prophecy. She'll destroy the pack. The Alpha King rose to his full height, his aura flaring until the torches reignited. But the council elders were already moving forward, cloaked in authority and fear. One of them, a woman with eyes like burnt amber, stepped into the circle. "Your Majesty," she said, voice trembling with forced calm, "you cannot claim what was banished. The moons forbid it." The king's silence was heavier than any roar. Arya felt every gaze pierce her. Shame burned hot under her skin. Her body screamed to flee. But then she heard it, whispers of the prophecy she had never fully known. The one marked by flame shall rise when the Alpha loses his crown. Her light will either save or end the bloodline of kings. Every word cut deeper. They thought she was doom itself wrapped in a girl's skin. When the council demanded her exile, the king did not answer immediately. That hesitation sliced through her worse than any blade. For the first time, she wondered if she'd been wrong about him, if his rescue had been pity, not purpose. Her chest tightened. The power under her skin flared in pain, a pulse she couldn't control. Silver sparks danced around her fingers, gasps rippled through the hall. "See," someone shouted, "she brings chaos." The Alpha King's gaze met hers then, steady, unreadable. Something passed between them, silent and raw. He turned back to the council. Enough! The word cracked the air. Silence fell. But the damage had been done. Arya backed away from the dais, heartbreaking. She didn't wait to see what decree followed. She ran. Through corridors of stone and torchlight, down toward the open gates, the night swallowed her whole once more. Rain began again, soft but relentless. She found shelter beneath the ruins at the edge of the cliffs, the same cliffs where outcasts once jumped to meet the sea. She wanted to scream but couldn't. Only the waves answered. Her thoughts spiraled, memories of rejection, flashes of his golden eyes, the echo of his voice. Why did fate keep tying her to pain? Why her? The silver light under her skin flickered weakly, like a candle refusing to die. Hours passed, footsteps approached. She didn't look up until his shadow fell across her. The Alpha King stood there, rain dripping from his hair, cloak gone, expression unreadable. He had followed her. For a long moment neither moved. The storm filled the silence between them. He knelt slowly, leaving space between them. No words, only the quiet surrender of presence. They found shelter in a nearby cave, hidden from the wind. A small fire flickered between them, painting his face in shifting gold. Arya sat wrapped in her own arms, watching the flames instead of him. The weight of what had happened still pressed heavy on her chest. He finally spoke, voice low, roughened by restraint. I didn't scent you before. The bond hid itself until the moons aligned. She said nothing. Her throat ached from unshed words. The fire popped, sending sparks into the dark. Outside, the rain eased, leaving behind the rhythm of dripping water, a heartbeat echoing nature itself. He continued, softer now. When I was a boy, they said the bond of kings was a curse, that whoever carried it would be bound to destruction. He looked into the fire, eyes distant. I've spent my life waiting for it, fearing it, hoping it would never come. His confession hung in the air, raw and human. For the first time, she saw not the king, but the man, haunted, weary, lonely. Arya's fingers tightened around her knees. I never asked for this, she whispered, voice trembling with something between anger and grief. Neither did I, he said, quietly. Silence stretched again, thick and fragile. Outside, the twin moons slipped from behind the clouds, their light spilling through the cave mouth. It bathed them both in silver. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly where the firelight touched it, a symbol she had always hidden. He noticed. His gaze softened, not with pity but reverence. He reached forward, slow enough for her to pull away. She didn't. His hand hovered above the mark, heat radiating from his skin. I see you, he said. All of you. Something in her broke then, not with pain but release. Tears blurred her vision, falling into the dust. He didn't move closer. He simply let her breathe, let her exist without judgment. And in that fragile quiet, trust began to take root. The fire burned lower. The world outside stilled. For the first time in years, Arya wasn't running. Dawn came in shades of lavender and ash. She woke to the sound of birds and the faint rustle of his cloak as he rose. He stood at the cave's edge, watching the horizon. We'll return tonight, he said. They won't stop until the prophecy chooses for itself. Arya looked at him, unsure whether to be terrified or hopeful. But something deep inside, the same place where silver light slept, whispered that this was only the beginning. The bond had been scented, the prophecy stirred. The world already shifting around them, and though she didn't yet know it, the next time she walked into that hall, she would not walk as prey. She would walk as flame. Morning bled into the mountains like a slow wound. Mist coiled through the valleys, silver against stone. Arya walked beside the Alpha King down a narrow trail that wound back toward the stronghold. Neither spoke. Words were too small for what waited ahead. The world had changed overnight. She felt it in the wind, charged, restless, alive with whispers that were not human. Every leaf, every breath of air seemed to hum her name. The Alpha's pace never faltered. His silence was armor. Hers was prayer. By dusk, the towers of the moon throne rose again, black against crimson sky. Drums echoed from within the walls, not for celebration this time, but for judgment. They entered the great hall together. Every torch burned white, fed with moonfire instead of oil. The council waited in a half-circle around the dais, robes heavy with authority, eyes cold with fear. Arya felt their hatred like heat on her skin. The memory of last night, the scent, the bond, hung between her and the Alpha like forbidden smoke. An elder spoke first. The prophecy has awakened. The bond must be broken before the moons align again. Another added, if not, the blood of kings will fall, and the throne will burn. Their words were daggers carved from superstition. The Alpha King listened without expression. His hands rested loosely at his sides, but power coiled around him like restrained lightning. Arya wanted to believe he would speak for her. She wanted to believe what she had felt by that fire was real. Then the betrayal came, not with a roar but a whisper. A guard stepped forward carrying something wrapped in crimson cloth. He unrolled it to reveal a silver collar etched with runes. "Contain her," said the eldest voice, "for the safety of all." Arya froze. The symbol on the collar matched the one that had burned her dreams since childhood, the mark of the sealed flame. The Alpha King's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Two guards approached her. She stepped back, shaking her head. "No." They advanced. The hall blurred. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Still he did not speak. Pain ripped through her as the collar touched her skin, cold, ancient, merciless. The silver flared, locking against her throat. Her power shrank, smothered. Gasps rose from the crowd. The cursed girl contained. The prophecy delayed. Arya's knees hit the stone. She looked up at him through tears and disbelief. The king met her gaze, eyes burning with something unreadable. Regret, maybe, or the cruelty of duty. And that was worse than hatred, because betrayal when born of love cuts deepest. They dragged her to the dungeon beneath the throne. Walls of obsidian swallowed the light. The air stank of salt and rust. When the door slammed shut, she finally screamed, not for pain, but for everything she had lost in a single breath. Above her, the mating moon climbed higher. Hours bled into days. She stopped counting. The collar drained her strength. Even her dreams grew quiet. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps above, his voice low and controlled, but she couldn't tell if it was real or the echo of memory. On the third night, thunder rattled the stones. A storm gathered, strange and deliberate. The guard who brought her water muttered a prayer before leaving. "The moons are bleeding," he whispered. "The prophecy stirs again." Arya lifted her head. Through the small slit of a window, she saw the impossible. One moon glowing red, the other white. Twin orbs bleeding light into each other. Her collar burned. The runes pulsed. The seal was weakening. And in that moment, something within her snapped free. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Chains groaned against the stones. Her heartbeat became thunder. A single word formed on her lips, not of rage, but remembrance. Enough. Light exploded outward, silver and blinding. The collar shattered like glass. Energy swept through the dungeon, turning metal molten and shadows into light. When the guards rushed in, they stopped dead. Arya stood at the center of the cell, eyes glowing white, hair lifted by invisible wind. The silver flame traced her veins, alive again after centuries of silence. She stepped forward. The chains that once bound her melted with every breath. The prophecy had not been a warning. It had been a promise. Up above, the throne room quaked. Wolves howled as the twin moons merged into one colossal sphere of light. The Alpha King turned toward the sound that split the night, the roar of destiny reborn. Stone burst as she ascended from the depths, wings of fire unfolding behind her, not feathered, not flesh, but energy shaped by will. The council scattered, fear thickened the air. Arya landed before the throne, silver light pooling around her feet. "You would make me your sacrifice," she said, voice carrying the resonance of 1,000 ancestors. "But I was never yours to command." Her gaze cut to the king. He stood motionless, torn between duty and awe. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, desperate to bow yet afraid to lose her. The elder raised a staff. "She will destroy us all." Arya turned her palm toward him. The staff crumbled into dust. "The only thing I destroy," she said softly, is the lie that fear built. The room shook. The ancient banners caught fire, blue and silver flame climbing the walls. Outside, the forest answered, trees bending, rivers glowing, the very ground singing with her pulse. She closed her eyes and let the energy flow through her. Every rejection, every wound, every night of exile, all of it became power. Light surged from her heart and rippled across the stronghold, tearing through centuries of curse. The chains binding the pack's souls snapped one by one. Wolves dropped to their knees, not from fear but reverence. The old magic that had shackled them dissolved into moonlight. Arya fell to her knees too, gasping, trembling under the weight of freedom. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder, warm, steady. The Alpha King knelt beside her, his own aura dimmed but certain. For the first time, there was no crown between them. Only truth. "You were never my curse," he said. "You were the awakening I feared to face." The bond between them ignited, not with violence this time, but peace. The merged moon above split again. Two lights balancing perfectly. Balance restored, prophecy fulfilled. But peace never stays. Because power, once freed, calls to its opposite. A tremor rolled through the ground. The flames dimmed. From the darkness beyond the walls came a sound, low, ancient, older than any pack's memory. A second voice. "She is not the only one." The king rose sharply, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. Arya followed his gaze. Out beyond the burning forest, another light had risen. Darker, redder, pulsing like a heartbeat. The prophecy was only half written. And destiny was far from finished. The flames had died, but the silence that followed was worse. It was the kind of silence that made the heart remember things it wished it could forget. Arya stood amid the ruins of the throne room. The banners were ash, the council gone. The Alpha King beside her, no crown, no guards, no throne, only the echo of a prophecy fulfilled halfway, and the taste of war still on the wind. The merged moon had split again, one white, one blood red. Balance had returned, or so they thought. But somewhere, far beyond the borders of the moon throne, a shadow stirred. The red light grew stronger each night. Wolves whispered of a second awakening, one not born of light, but of hunger. Old scrolls spoke of it only in fragments. When the twin moons divide, so too shall the heart of the wolf divide. Arya could feel it. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the other side of her flame. Dark, furious, ancient. Something that wanted out. The king watched her closely. He no longer ordered her, he studied her. The bond between them had changed. It was no longer command, but tether. Two souls tied by something neither could undo. At night, she dreamed of running barefoot through the fields of silver grass, only to find footprints behind her that weren't hers. Something followed. Something that wore her face. Days later, they rode north toward the Valley of Bones, a place no wolf dared to tread since the Great Silence. Legends said it was where the first wolf goddess had fallen, and where her blood had carved the rivers themselves. The Alpha rode ahead, silent. Arya followed, the air around her humming faintly with power she couldn't hide anymore. The land grew strange, the trees leaned away as they passed, their branches blackened as if from a fire long dead. The sky dimmed even under sunlight. Then they reached it. A valley carved deep into the mountain, filled with pillars of stone that looked like ribs of some long-buried creature. The bones glowed faintly red under the twin moons. Arya dismounted. Her feet sank into dust that glittered faintly like powdered glass. "This place remembers us," she whispered, and the valley answered. A low hum rippled through the air, thousands of whispers old as the moons themselves. The stones trembled. Something beneath them was waking. The Alpha reached for his sword, but it was too late. The ground split open, and from the fissure rose a figure cloaked in smoke and blood-red light. Eyes like coals, voice like wind tearing through hollow mountains. "Child of the moon flame," it said, "you have taken what was never meant to be yours." Arya's knees trembled. The presence was overwhelming, like standing before the sea during a storm. She tried to speak, but the voice cut through her. "You broke the seal," it thundered, "and with it, you broke the world's last balance." Her power flickered uncontrollably, silver clashing with red. The valley itself seemed to breathe with her fear. The Alpha stepped between them, growling low, his aura blazing gold. "She is under my protection." The shadow laughed, a sound that made the stones crack. "Then you, Wolf King, will fall beside her." The sky shattered with light. Wolves from every clan felt the tremor. The very air screamed as the red light spilled across the land. Arya's fire surged out of instinct. The Alpha's sword cut through the smoke, each strike glowing with lunar energy, but the shadow moved like water, like wind, like memory. Every blow passed through it, leaving behind only cold. The voice whispered inside her mind now, closer, crueler. "You cannot fight me. I am you." Images flashed, herself as a child, chained, crying in the dark. Her rage, her pain, her desire for freedom, all twisted into something else. She realized what it was. The second moon wasn't a new power. It was her own darkness, given form, drawn by her release. The prophecy had warned, when the sealed flame burns free, its shadow will demand the same. The Alpha was thrown backward, his armor shattered. He hit the ground hard, gasping. Arya turned, fury burning her tears away. "No," she whispered. "You're not me." But the shadow smiled, and every word she spoke came from its lips too. "I am everything you buried to survive." The world exploded in light, half silver, half crimson. When the dust cleared, Arya was alone. The valley was silent again. The Alpha King was gone. Only the twin moons hung above, one pale and trembling, the other bleeding red. Her power hummed uncontrollably under her skin. She fell to her knees, trembling, clutching her chest. In the silence, a whisper lingered. "The true war begins when the moons meet again." And from the red light, a single figure formed, a wolf, colossal and silent, watching her from the ridge. Its eyes were the same color as hers. It bowed its head once, then vanished into the mist. She returned to the ruins of the throne at dawn. The kingdom was in mourning. No one dared ask where the king had gone, or why her aura now shimmered with red and silver both. Arya stood at the balcony facing the fading moons. The world below was broken, but alive. She raised her hand toward the horizon. Her voice was quiet, but the wind carried it far. "I will find him, and I will end what I began, even if I must walk through the shadow of my own soul." The flames lit again, faint but steady. Her power no longer screamed, it sang. The prophecy had shifted once more, its final verse not yet written. And far away beneath the blood moon, the Alpha King awoke in chains, his eyes now glowing red. There are nights when even the stars refuse to shine. That night was one of them. The blood moon hung low, heavy like an omen, and the wind carried no song, only whispers that sounded like broken vows. Somewhere beyond the northern peaks, where the mountains clawed at the sky, the Alpha King awoke in darkness. He did not remember the battle, he did not remember the light. Only pain, and her voice, crying his name as the world tore itself in two. Now that voice was gone. Chains bound his wrists, runes carved deep into the metal, glowing with the same red light that stained the second moon. Every heartbeat felt like fire. Every breath a battle. He tried to shift, to break free, but the power that answered was not his own. It whispered promises of strength, of immortality, of vengeance. And when he looked into the reflection of his own eyes, he saw something that wasn't him staring back. The red moon had chosen him, or perhaps claimed him. Far away in the moon throne, Arya stood before a broken council. The elders had gathered again, their faces pale beneath torchlight. They whispered of omens, of the prophecy corrupted, of the Alpha King's disappearance as proof of her curse. But Arya no longer bowed before them. Her gaze was steady, her voice calm, yet beneath her composure burned a storm no cage could hold. "I will bring him back," she said quietly, "or I will end him myself." No one dared answer. The silence of the throne hall was thick, suffocating. Only the sound of her heartbeat echoed, strong, sure, and haunted. That night, she stood alone beneath the twin moons. Her reflection shimmered in the river below, half silver, half crimson. Her flame responded to both. She closed her eyes, whispering to the wind, "Wherever you are, my king, hold on." And far beyond her reach, in the caverns of the dead mountains, the Alpha heard her voice, like a memory clawing at his soul. When the king awoke again, he was not alone. The cavern had changed. Torches of blood-red flame lined the walls. Thrones carved of obsidian circled a pool of dark water. And, seated around it, creatures that should not exist. Wolves with eyes like dying stars. Spirits bound in half-human, half-shadow forms. The air itself seemed to bleed darkness. At the center stood a figure draped in smoke, the same that had risen in the Valley of Bones. It smiled, slow and cold. "Welcome, my Wolf King," it said. "The world above calls you fallen, but we call you ours." He tried to speak, but no words came. "Do you know what she did?" the voice whispered. "She split the moons, she broke the balance, and you were the price." The king's eyes flickered between gold and crimson. The shadow's words twisted around his heart like chains. "She left you. She claimed the throne while you bled for her." Lies and truth tangled like smoke, indistinguishable. The more he resisted, the louder the whispers grew. "Join us. Let the red moon crown you. Let her feel the same chains she gave you." And with a single breath, the Alpha King fell into darkness. Days later, Arya felt it. The shift in the wind, the howls in the distance that didn't belong to her pack. The Shadow Court was moving. Villages burned beneath the crimson sky. Rivers turned black. The moon's reflection trembled like it feared its own light. She rode at dawn with her guard, though she knew none could stand beside her for long. What was coming wasn't war. It was reckoning. As they crossed the frosted plains, the wolves fell silent one by one. Even the wind refused to speak. Then she saw it. The first shadow beast, standing upon a hill, eyes glowing like coals, and behind it, hundreds more, moving in perfect silence. At their center, cloaked in red, rode the Alpha King. Her heart stopped. For a heartbeat, she saw the man she loved, the one who once held her in the forest, whispering that she was not a curse, but a promise. Then his gaze met hers, and there was nothing human left. The plains erupted in chaos. Wolves charged, shadows consumed. The sound was not of war, but of the earth breaking open. Arya's power flared, silver fire cascading through the darkness, cutting through the swarm like dawn tearing through night. Every movement was instinct, every breath defiance. She reached for him through the haze, through blood and smoke and memory. "Kyle!" she cried, the first time she'd spoken his name aloud since his fall. The sound cut through the battle like a blade. For a moment, the red light in his eyes flickered. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then he turned, and the darkness behind him surged like a tide. Her power clashed with his, red against silver. Every strike cracked the sky. Every scream bent the wind. And when the storm broke, she was on her knees, breathless, her fire dimming. He stood above her, sword raised. "Finish it," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "If the darkness has taken you, let it end with me." But the blade trembled, and for the briefest second, gold light returned to his eyes. He dropped the sword. The Shadow Court hissed, their forms distorting in fury. The sky darkened as they descended upon them both, and together silver and crimson light exploded once more. When the light faded, the battlefield was gone. Only ash remained, and silence. Arya awoke in a ruin of glass and dust, the moons above her flickering like dying candles. The Alpha King lay beside her, his chest rising shallowly, the red glow dimmed but not gone. She reached for him, her fingers trembling. "Stay," she whispered. "Please." He stirred, eyes fluttering open, half gold, half crimson. "You should have killed me," he rasped. "I couldn't," she breathed, "because even now, I still see you." He smiled weakly. "Then you are doomed, my flame." And his eyes closed again. Her tears hit the ground, each drop glowing faintly silver. They burned through the soil, marking the shape of a crescent moon. The prophecy was still moving. The end was not yet written. Night bled into dawn. The red moon sank, leaving trails of smoke along the horizon. The air felt different, heavy, waiting. As Arya watched the Alpha's still body, something stirred within her flame. A memory not her own, of the goddess who once fell in the Valley of Bones. A voice spoke inside her. Two souls bound by light and shadow cannot end in separation. One must rise, so the other may rest. She understood. The curse could not be broken, only transferred. She leaned over him, her tears falling on his chest. Her voice was steady, though her heart cracked with each word. If my light is the cage, then let it be me who bears it. And as dawn broke, silver fire enveloped them both. Her body dissolved into light, merging with his shadow. The moons aligned once more. When the light faded, a single figure stood beneath the new dawn, eyes glowing neither gold nor red, but white. A wolf reborn, both flame and shadow. The prophecy had found its true end, or its true beginning. And as the wind carried the scent of silver rain, a whisper echoed through the ruins. The moon flame still burns. The dawn was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Mist lingered over the moon throne, silver light spilling across the ruins like a blessing or a warning. The pack stirred slowly, faces pale with awe and fear. They had seen her power. They had seen the Alpha fall. And now, in the aftermath, none knew who they were to follow. The Alpha King, reborn, reshaped, stood atop the highest tower. He looked down at the remnants of the battlefield. His chest bore no scars, yet his eyes held the memory of every blow, every scream, every shadow that had consumed him. And beneath it all, a faint echo, her echo, lingered. Arya's light, her silver fire, had not vanished. It remained, folded into the marrow of the Alpha, a ghost that whispered in wind and shadow. At first the pack thought it was hallucination. Stray lights dancing at night, shadows moving too deliberately, whispers in the corners of the hall. But the Alpha knew. He could feel her presence whenever he closed his eyes. Not fully her, yet not gone. A tether forged in pain, in fire, in moonlight. Every night he climbed to the balcony, watching the twin moons. He called her name silently. Sometimes he thought he heard it in the rustling of leaves or the crackle of embers. The pack noticed his change. Gone was the king who ruled with silent authority. Now he moved carefully, almost humbly, as if every step risked losing the ghost beside him, or angering it. Days turned to weeks. The council was gone, scattered, broken. The Alpha called a new gathering. Wolves came from distant lands, drawn by the scent of the reborn leader. They came curious, cautious, fearful. Arya's presence lingered like light through mist. Silver flames danced along the edges of his cloak as he walked among them, touching nothing, yet leaving warmth wherever he passed. The pack began to rebuild. The halls of the moon throne glimmered under new torchlight. The banners were remade, stitched with threads of silver and crimson, a reminder that light and shadow must coexist. Yet the Alpha's gaze often drifted beyond the walls, to the valleys, to the mountains. He felt the stirrings of the Ancient One, the force that had first claimed the second moon. It was patient, it was waiting, and it knew he carried both flame and shadow. At night, the Alpha would retreat to the highest tower. He could feel her there, guiding, whispering, teaching without form or flesh. "Do not fear the shadow," her voice would murmur. "It is part of you, as I am part of you. You cannot deny it, nor can you abandon it." He reached for the void, touching air that shimmered faintly silver. Her presence pulsed back, a warmth that hurt, that healed, that reminded him of everything he had lost and gained. Sometimes, in dreams, she appeared fully, smiling, eyes blazing with fire, hair lifted by invisible wind, and then she would vanish, leaving him trembling, hungry for more. The pack noticed his strange habits. They whispered among themselves, "The king is haunted or blessed." Beyond the mountains, in places untouched by human hands, the ground shifted. Caves long sealed by magic cracked. Rivers reversed, leaving silver and blood mingled in the soil. A presence older than packs, older than moons, stirred. It had watched the prophecy unfold, waited while flame and shadow clashed. Now, it rose. The Alpha felt it in dreams, a rumble beneath his chest, a hunger beneath his skin, a challenge he could not yet name. The silver flame flared again, instinctively answering the call. And the shadow within him stirred, dark and wary. He knew one thing. The next confrontation would not be alone. Arya's tether was strong, yes, but not enough. He would need more. The pack would need more, and they would all have to survive a force beyond understanding. The twin moons hung low one night, mirrored in the frozen river below the throne. The Alpha King alone knelt at the water's edge. He traced the reflection with a finger. Silver, crimson, the balance of light and shadow, the echo of Arya's flame. "We will rise again," he whispered, voice carrying across the river, "and I will find you, always." The wind answered. It carried a scent he knew. Arya, far away. In the forests where shadows moved like living smoke, she stirred. Part of her flame was free, part remained bound to him, and part watched, waiting for the moment the ancient force moved closer. The moons shimmered, the rivers of silver rippled, and deep below the earth something older than the Alpha, older than the prophecy, opened its eyes. It had waited for the rise of the twin flames. It had waited for the rebirth of the king. And it had waited for her. The Alpha returned to the pack, a silent presence among those who did not yet understand the war that loomed. The wolves whispered, the nights grew colder, and somewhere a shadow moved beneath the mountains. He could feel it. The final hour approached, the ultimate confrontation. He would have to face it. He would have to survive. And he would have to protect the ghost of the one he loved, even if she no longer walked among the living. The silver flame pulsed in his veins. The shadow responded, and the moons hung heavy, waiting to judge the world once more. The night was darker than any before. The twin moons hung like watchful eyes, one silver, one blood red. The wind carried a whisper through the trees, over mountains, across rivers, a warning and a promise. Arya's flame, tethered to the Alpha King, pulsed in resonance with the red moon. It had grown stronger with each day of separation, each battle survived, each lesson learned. It was no longer just her power. It was part of him, and the shadow that had claimed him lingered, restless and alive. The ancient force stirred beneath the earth, its presence heavier than the mountains themselves. It had waited centuries for this moment, the rise of the twin flames, the reborn Alpha, the one who bore both silver and crimson in his veins. And now, it had awakened. The Alpha King stood atop the cliffs overlooking the Valley of Bones. Behind him, the pack gathered, wolves who had survived, fled, and returned. Some had seen Arya, some had not. All had felt the pull of her flame. He could feel her presence inside him, her whisper soft yet relentless. "Do not falter. Do not let fear claim you. We are bound, and we are eternal." He drew a deep breath. The air itself seemed to tremble. From the fissures below, shadows rose, hundreds, thousands, a tide of darkness that twisted, snarled, and consumed, and at the center of it all the ancient force took shape. A wolf, titanic obsidian black, eyes like dying suns. Its growl rolled through the valley, shaking stone and soul alike. The Alpha King's chest pulsed with light. Silver and crimson fire erupted from his veins. The shadow within him surged, but this time it obeyed. It was tethered, honed, and ready. Arya's voice echoed inside him. "This is our moment. Do not fail me. Do not fail yourself." He leaped from the cliff. Light and shadow spiraled around him, a cyclone of fire and memory. The ancient force struck, massive and relentless, teeth snapping at the very air. Every strike shook the valley, sending shockwaves of flame and ash across the plains. The pack charged alongside him, howling, claws and fangs, tearing through the lesser shadows. The Alpha met the ancient wolf head-on, silver fire clashing with black obsidian energy. The ground cracked, the rivers boiled, the air ignited. And through it all, he felt her, Arya, guiding, whispering, merging her essence with his own. "Now," she said, "claim it all." With a roar that split the heavens, he drew the shadow within him forward, not as an enemy, but as a weapon. Light and dark fused. Crimson and silver spun together into a beam of pure energy. The ancient wolf staggered, howling, claws tearing at nothing as the twin flames consumed it. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Suddenly the flames coalesced into her. Arya appeared, fully manifest, luminous and unstoppable, rising from the heart of the Alpha King's power. Her eyes blazed, her hair a torrent of light and fire. She was not a ghost, not a memory. She was the tether itself, made flesh. Together they faced the ancient wolf. Together they moved as one, flame and shadow intertwined, unstoppable. Every strike of the wolf shattered against their combined might. Every howl of darkness was met with the purity of their bond, and then, with a final roar, the wolf collapsed, consumed by light that neither burned nor destroyed. It transformed. The valley was silent. Arya and the Alpha King stood side by side, breathing heavily. The twin moons shone brighter than ever, casting silver and crimson light across the Valley of Bones. The pack approached, eyes wide, sensing the culmination of prophecy, battle, and love. The ancient force was gone, or so it seemed, but deep beneath the earth, a pulse remained, faint yet persistent. Something older than them all waited. The Alpha King turned to Arya. "Are you real?" he asked, voice trembling. "I am," she whispered, smile radiant and fierce. "And so is our bond. Forever." But even as they embraced, the ground trembled again. A whisper, soft and haunting, floated across the valley. "The moon flame will rise again, and this is only the beginning." As the moons aligned above, casting a perfect circle of light, the Alpha King and Arya looked toward the horizon. There in the distance a shadow moved, smaller than before but purposeful. Its eyes glowed faintly red. Its aura hummed with the same ancient power that had nearly destroyed them all. Arya felt it immediately. Her tether pulsed, warning, guiding, challenging. She turned to the Alpha. "This isn't over," she said softly. "And next time, it will demand everything." The wind carried her words across the valley, across mountains, across the hearts of the pack, and beyond. The Moon King Chronicles had only just begun. If the tale of the Moon Flame, the Alpha King, and the lost flame of Arya stirred something in you, subscribe to Moon King Chronicles. Every story here burns with power, love, and danger. Join the pack before the shadows rise again. Fade into the twin moons, silver and crimson, as the screen darkens.